Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, Episode 19. Today's podcast addresses the subject of what not to say to bereaved family and friends when someone dies. Essentially, it comes down to what we do when we find ourselves faced with suffering. I find the temptation is to either change the situation to make it more comfortable for ourselves, or remove ourselves from the circumstances entirely by running away. The more difficult, but also more creative response, where we are likely to learn the most and be the most effective, is to stay in the suffering, be as emotionally present as possible, and not give in to the desire to fix what is going on around us. This strategy not only works in instances of death, but has also proved an effective approach when attending a high school reunion.
Hey everyone, welcome to Communication Diva, the podcast that helps you to improve your communication skills in the hopes that you will improve your relationships. I'm Jenn Swanson, and I'm so pleased that you are listening from wherever it is you're listening in the world. And I know there are a lot of you out there, so I really appreciate that you're taking the time out of your busy lives to be with me today. I'm coming to you today from amidst a bunch of boxes, and I'm wearing my painting clothes because we are getting ready to list our home for sale. And so we're trying to spruce it up and declutter it and stage it a bit. And it's an awful lot of work. We're not going to be moving very far away, but we're hoping to go from this quite small townhouse to a larger home with an office in it so that we have a bit more space for this busy family and so that we have a space for our other business, which is a business of coaching and spiritual direction. We have another website that's a bit of a work in progress, and I'll let you know more about that in the future. But both Scott, my husband, and I are hoping to do some coaching in the coming year. And so we'll let you know about that. There's a lot of exciting things that we're hoping to do, and some of that will be revealed as we progress. So right now, I wanted to tell you about my topic, and my topic is spurred on today by a grief workshop that I've taught many times, and by several people that I know who are going through the process of grieving right now. I heard a couple of people yesterday when I was at church. One of my other jobs, besides teaching in healthcare, one of my other jobs is working in ministry. And when I was at church yesterday, I met several people who had lost loved ones, two-legged and four-legged. And so I was thinking about this, and my topic for today is 7 things not to say when someone dies. And again, I have taught this workshop on death and grieving a number of times in the healthcare field. And very interesting that there are several very unhelpful responses that we in North America have to death. And part of it is, I think, that we just don't do death well. Our whole culture seems to be focused on anti-aging, on living life to its fullest, and we can't talk about dying. It's almost taboo. And that's not quite true. I'm exaggerating, but it seems that way sometimes. And I just don't think we do a very good job of it here. Now, other countries may. And if you're listening in a country that does, please come on over and leave a comment and let us know what it is that you do well, because I think we need some help. When I was a nursing unit clerk, and if you want to know what that is, you can go to www.communicationdiva.com/nursing unit clerk, all one word, and you'll find a blog post for a description of what that job entails. And my last position when I was working as a nursing unit clerk before making the move to teaching and doing ministry was on the palliative care unit. And I worked on the palliative care unit for 3 years full-time, and it was my favorite place out of all the 23 years I worked in the hospital and out of all of the locations in the hospital, and I worked in almost all of them. And why was it my favorite place? I think because it was real. You know, there was more love there. There was more real, honest conversation there because people were running out of time. And there were some amazing people that were facing death who taught me an awful lot. It was really where I most strongly felt a calling to ministry, and where I discovered that I wanted to be sitting at the bedside holding somebody's hand rather than doing the paperwork behind a desk. So it was rather pivotal in my life. And again, it was an amazing place to be. Palliative care, if you're not familiar with it, is a place where people go to die, but not everyone there is imminently dying. Some people are there for symptom management to help them get stabilized so that they can go home again for a while and be in comfort and have a little bit of quality of life. And then it is the place where people come at the very end of their lives to die with as much dignity and in as much comfort as at all possible. The nursing care is completely patient-centered. The institutional schedule doesn't exist in as much as what the patient needs at the time is what happens. And the usual hospital routines get adjusted on a case-by-case basis. Visiting rules are different on palliative care. Pets can be brought in most places to see their owners. Loved ones sometimes spend the night on reclining chairs or beds. And where I worked, the volunteer people, mostly volunteer women, served tea and home baking twice a week to patients and to staff alike from silver tea services on little carts. It was very much more home-like than you would find on a regular hospital unit. A lot of the staff didn't wear uniforms. A lot of the staff were more relaxed in what they wore. The decor was more home-like. There was a lot more furniture that wasn't hospital-like furniture, etc. It was an important place to work, a real place to work. And as much as it was often a sad or hard place to work, it was also a place that was full of, believe it or not, laughter, full of joyful times, and just really, really a moving place to be. So a couple of things that I found myself trying to do while I was there was to help visitors who didn't know what to do with themselves. I think there was a lot of fear, a lot of people dealing with their own history around death and dying and grieving. And so I would often get people coming to the desk saying, well, what should I do? And I would say to them, don't do anything. Go and sit with him or her and just be there. And that old saying, we are human beings, not human doings, was one that I used to use a lot. And I used to say to them, just being there is doing something very important. And sometimes when I said that, they'd look at me quite dubiously. And other times they felt reassured and that I had given them permission to just go ahead and sit there and hold the person's hand for a while. So we don't always know what to do. And today's topic is on what to do after. What do you do? What do you say? How do you act around someone who has just lost a loved one? Grief is a really weird and very individual experience, and no two people go through it exactly in the same way. Here are my 7 tips based on both many years working in the hospital system in general, my years on palliative care, and my recent years in ministry. 7 things you should not say when somebody dies. So the first one is the fix-it trap. You really can't fix it. Saying things like, there, let me make you some tea is really nice and sweet, but it's not going to fix anything. And it's really a form of not listening. Buying the person another dog right after their beloved dog dies is not helpful. Just as a person can't be replaced, neither can a pet just be replaced with another one. Sometimes things cannot be fixed. While making meals for a grieving family may be helpful and welcomed, it's not going to fix anything. It may make people feel better by giving them something to do, but it doesn't solve the grief process. It's a process, and it can take months and even sometimes years to work through. So that's the number 1, the fix-it trap. Number 2 is advice giving or giving solutions. You should do this, you should do that. There really are no solutions when someone dies, and giving advice that is not solicited is really not helpful. Neither is telling the other person all about the time that your Aunt Ethel died. Your experience is not their experience, and this moment is actually not all about you. It's all about the other person. So turning it back onto yourself is not helpful at all, and in fact, it's pretty self-centered, and I think it's quite arrogant. This drives me crazy. This happened to me when my grandma died. People would tell me all about when their grandma died. And I really didn't want to hear it right then. This wasn't their story. This was what had happened to me. And hearing all about their, 5 stories about their relatives dying was really annoying and hard to get away from. So just be considerate of that. Be aware. Don't tell everyone about your story. And certainly don't give advice that isn't asked for. Number 3 is praising. Praising the dead person is what happens at funerals and memorials. And it's not particularly helpful right at the time that the person tells you that they've lost someone, unless you especially want to make them cry. Of course, the person who died is a wonderful and special person to the one that loved them. And you don't need to restate the obvious. Save all of that for the eulogy. Number 4 is avoiding. Some people just don't know how to react and they go into hiding or they avoid the topic. And this is often a very hurtful response and one that can be really hard to understand by those who have lost a loved one. You come back to work after being off for a few days because of a death and people don't say anything about it. That's weird. And usually it's a response that's made out of fear or the feeling of inadequacy, the old head in the sand thing. If I don't say anything, everything will go back to normal the way it was before and we'll just avoid the whole topic. That's really not very good communication. And it's avoidance, and avoidance just is not helpful. It is the way some people react to scary situations, though. They run away. And unfortunately, it's hurtful to the person at the other end of it. So be mindful of that as well. It's good to acknowledge. Acknowledgement is very important. And just, to say, I'm really sorry to hear about your mom, or I'm really sorry to hear about your grandma, at least is saying something and not avoiding the whole situation. So that was number 4. Number 5 is reassuring. It's okay. You'll get over it. You'll be fine. In a few weeks, it'll all be over and you'll just be able to move on with your life. Really? How can you possibly reassure someone? And by what authority? There's usually nothing that can reassure because there's nothing anyone can do to fix the situation. Refer back to number 1 if you want to hear about fixing it. Again, I think this is pretty insensitive and not very real. Life has completely shifted for the one who has lost someone to death. The sun might still be shining outside and people are laughing, how dare they, and the birds are singing. But for the one deep in the throes of grief, nothing is or will ever be the same again because that person is gone. So reassurance is pretty useless. Number 6, platitudes. And this is probably the worst thing. And from talking to people in my grief workshops, this is what drove them crazy and that made them the most upset, are platitudes. The uttering of things such as time heals all wounds, or she'll be in a better place, or he's out of his misery now, or any number of those tired old lame sayings that you can think of. Platitudes are just awful. How do you know she'll be in a better place, really? How is anything you say going to make it better for the other person? Not helpful, pretty presumptuous, and just something to avoid at all costs. And the last one, number 7, not listening. People who are grieving don't need answers or solutions or your stories. They just need someone to listen to them. And listening, as we've said before, is a huge part of good communication. And this is a time when having somebody just to listen to all the thoughts and feelings that come spilling out is invaluable. Not listening or avoiding the topic or making yourself super busy so you don't have to acknowledge, changing the subject, or not having time for the grieving person. All of these are reactionary, unhelpful things to do when someone dies. So that is number 7. So the fix-it trap, advice giving, praising, avoiding, reassuring, giving of platitudes, and not listening. So if those are the things not to do, what can you do? And it's pretty simple, really. You can just be there for the person. You don't necessarily even have to say anything. At first you can just be there to listen. Hugs, prayers, and open ears. Be real about it. And if you can't think of anything appropriate to say, just don't say anything. Just be. A squeeze of the hand or a touch in the arm or a hug or just sitting with somebody is actually doing more than you might even realize. And it's a much better way to go than to say something lame and unhelpful. And later on, you can offer to help with basic things like walking the dog or going grocery shopping or house cleaning or preparing food or helping with childcare. All of those things can be something that you can do later on. You can help with any funeral or memorial preparation tasks, maybe offer to pick up flowers or drive people places. Just being present and ready to help is a major support. I have 2 friends who don't know each other and who live in different countries, who over the course of 2 days, or within 2 days of each other, lost their adult sons to suicide. And this was a very difficult time anyway, but it was compounded by all their own feelings of, guilt and doubt and loss and the stigma that surrounds suicide. And I really didn't know what to say. So I said that, other than sending them my love and being there to listen, I said, I don't know what to say. So just know that I'm here and that you're in my heart right now. And I think that was real and honest and better than saying almost anything else. So I'm going to leave you today with a quote from Stephen Levine, who has an audio recording that I listened to called Meditations from the Heart. And this really speaks to me on this topic, and I hope it speaks to you too. He says, if we are not allowed to be in pain, we're going to be in pain our whole lives. To the degree that we can open our heart to our own grief, we will open our heart to another's. And that's all for today. I need to get back to painting. So I'm hoping that you will leave a comment on the website at www.communicationdiva.com. If you have any thoughts on this topic or anything you want to say about times that you were in grief and that people were saying helpful or non-helpful things, you can come and follow me on Twitter at Jenn Swanson2, the number 2. It's all one word, Jenn Swanson2. Or you can leave a review for me in iTunes. I really appreciate that. So this is Jenn Swanson with Communication Diva signing off. Until next time.